Dan, good to have you back here. What are you looking for this week from Apple?
Hey, Oliver. Well, everyone's anticipating, obviously, new features. There's talk that there's going to be some introduction or discussion about a new microprocessor that would be used in their Macs based on their ARM technology that's kind of getting away from Intel. Also, potentially a new operating system for their Mac. And then, of course, everybody always gets excited, Oliver, when they start talking about the service side in terms of Apple TV, Apple News, Apple Card, any new enhancements there. And then also talk about what's going on in their wearables watch area. Of course, that's become more of a growth segment for them. That was up 22% last quarter. There's hopes that there'll be some new features on their iOS 14 operating system as regards to fitness. And I think the million-dollar question, Oliver, which I think we could talk about for hours, is Apple going to give any indication, are they going to stay on course to introduce their new 5G phone in the September quarter, or will be potentially delayed into, let's say, the Christmas holiday season, maybe into December, just based on what's going on in terms of the economy right now. So I think those are some of the big things that we're going to be focusing on with the Developers Conference.
Dan, do you think that there is enough evidence to show there will be demand for that phone when it's launched this year? We've been talking about housing picking up, so if people can do that, I imagine they can probably afford a new phone.
Well, you're right, Oliver, and I think the big thing is unemployment, right? We saw a good data point come out last week. We had a huge upsurge in terms of the claims, and it'll just be, I think, a question of where those are as we head into that period, that last quarter for Apple. If the unemployment rates are still elevated, people are worried about their jobs, they're probably going to be less likely to go and upgrade. But obviously, if unemployment comes down and people are getting back to work and things are normalizing, then I think they've got a good chance they'll stay on course and introduce that phone in that September quarter and ramp it up for the holiday season. And to answer your question, Oliver, I would assume that people would upgrade to try to get some of these more enhanced download times that you can get on 5G.
Dan, we've seen Apple climb to records in the wake of this virus at the same time as this whole quarantine theme led by Amazon has done really well too. Does Apple belong in that same cohort, or is it just getting dragged with an overall NASDAQ bid? I mean, is Apple a stay-at-home stock?
You're right, Oliver. I mean, the stock now trades at 25 times earnings. It's made a huge move. And sometimes I kind of scratch my head a little bit, even though it's a stock that we hold and I'm pleased that it's performing so well. It is interesting to see it doing as well as it is when there is so many skeptics out there about, that next growth phase for them, which is obviously 5G. So I don't know, Oliver, if we could say that Apple belongs with, let's say, a Zoom Technologies, or you mentioned Amazon, or maybe even a Netflix, in terms of these companies that directly benefit from quarantining and working from home. So I think because of that, in some ways, it is somewhat surprising the stock has done so well.
This morning we were talking about an upgrade on Western Digital based in part on the Apple story, but just as a whole, 5G phones and a wave that's expected to ramp up. Does the semiconductor, does the next stage down the supply chain look as appealing as well? Dan, walk me through kind of how your tech portfolio is skewed right now.
Well, you're right, Oliver. And if you think about the entire movement towards 5G, right? At this point in time, a lot of the service providers have been somewhat slow to kind of do the build out on the infrastructure side. You mentioned Western Digital, more on kind of the storage side with Seagate and so forth. But if you trickle down and you look at various companies that would benefit directly from kind of an infrastructure build out, that movement has been a little bit slower than anticipated, because I think a lot of service providers are kind of waiting for the Apple phone to come out. We have the Samsung 5G phone out, but we don't have the Apple yet to really go and ramp up on the infrastructure side. And they've been a little bit slower because they can actually use their current 4G infrastructure to get close to a 5G level without totally committing. So to answer your question, I think eventually they're going to have to do that. They're going to be forced to do it. And you're right, you're going to get this ecosystem effect, not only in terms of on the Apple phone side, right, like a Broadcom that does a lot of business with them, and sorts of other chip companies, but also you're going to see it trickle down into the infrastructure side in regards to companies that would benefit from that in terms of those build outs to movement towards to 5G.